Good evening to all the K community members. Welcome to KCC 40th edition of K community, and welcome to all the viewers from the live stream also across the world. So I think most of you know about K community because I think most of you come at least once for the K community. Monthly once we meet here, and then people from various walks of life come and share their experiences and knowledge with the audience, and we have people coming from various industries, institutions, and then academies here to meet, and then we also have a lot of people joining from across the world and then viewing it through the live streaming thing. And we have this K community in a couple of cities actually. This initiative by CII, and Sukumar was very instrumental in starting this in Chennai here in 2008 actually, September. So we're going to complete 5 years now. And so that's brief about K community, and it's a knowledge community, and it's all about coming and sharing knowledge. So we don't say this knowledge or this thing. So any knowledge is welcome here. So first of all, thanks Manoj for kindly accepting to speak in and share your session. And for all of them, like if I mention Dev and Telos and evolving organizations, they will definitely relate because Dev's session was had such an impact with our K community members. So, so Manoj is the co-founder of Telos actually, and Telos, which actually aims at working on the consciousness of individuals and organizations, help them evolve actually. That's their fundamental objective of Telos. And he is also currently a member of Auroville, and he is an engineer and a postgraduate in product design from National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad. And he has been exploring the internal yoga of Sri Aurobindo, and he got very interested in that. And since 1989, actually he wanted to pursue in-depth in internal yoga, so he came to Auroville and he joined there because he had deep interest in Sri Aurobindo's teachings. So and then from 1995, he's been staying in Auroville, and I think all of you know about Auroville. I think those who have gone to Pondicherry would have visited Auroville. It's a small village or city or town by itself. You can call with around 2,000 plus people with 43 nationalities, and engaged in a lot of different things and trying to form a new society. Basically based on the teachings of the mother and Sri Aurobindo. That's the concept. And in Auroville, Manoj is involved in 3 things actually. One is Telos, of course, is the key thing which he is helping, trying to help individuals and organizations, evolve themselves over a period of time. And next is AuroNet, which is basically development of software tools for the Auroville's community, the intranet portal basically. And third is Sopanam, which is making films based on Sri Aurobindo's vision, so that it has a better reach to people. So today, Manoj is going to actually speak on communities and collective intelligence, because that's something which they have been working now of late. That is the concept of a collective intelligence which comes out of from a community. It emerges, it's emergent property. So it's not an individual. So that's the thing he's going to speak. And he also is going to share his views on why communities are essential, important, and so on. And in fact, one of the members asked us, Manoj, is he going to talk about physical communities or even virtual communities? Like virtual community we have, K community also. So over to you, Manoj. Thanks a lot for accepting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to come and share with you some of the learnings over the last 20 years. Way back in 93, when I have finished my studies and started working with industries, we faced one problem, that is as a designer, we had to deal with the CEO who had the vision and the dream about new product lines and the vision for the company, till to the people on the ground who are actually making the models, and we ourselves get into the place and actually hands-on work on things. And in the industry hierarchy, they couldn't fit us, especially the middle management did not know where we actually fit in. Below, above, and how you deal with. Unless you are plugged into some position, they were facing difficulty, and so we were put outside. We had a design consultancy, independent consultancy, dealing with a set of industries, so we could be independent, and especially working with dealing with creativity and innovation. And it is not something that works between 9 to 5 schedule, and it was any time, and especially we were night birds. So we wanted that individual freedom to do our explorations. And that quest, at the same time I was exploring my own personal journey and the concept of freedom, creativity, inner growth. So eventually I was not so happy with the industrial context. I wanted to explore further, so I left the industry in search of this greater freedom. And in 95 I joined Auroville. That was the year Yahoo, eBay, all that came up. And since then I had been exploring organizations. What is the difference between various types of organizations? What was the nature of Auroville as an organization? And one of my favorite metaphor that I use is, say if you take water for example. Water exists in 3 different states: solid, liquid or vapor, and that depends on the thermal energy, and in each form it's the same molecules organizing differently, but the freedom of individual molecules varies as you go into the vapor level. So this, a cloud doesn't look like well organized unless you see it from a distance compared to an ice cube, whereas the freedom of the individual is such an enormous difference in these two. Yet this cloud is a form of organization, and these days we can see across the world this sort of cloud like organizations emerging where individuals are extremely free, and very creative organizations emerging, especially open source communities. They are more and more like clouds where individuals are moving from one group to another and simultaneously belonging to multiple online communities where they are contributing their creative output. And so that is one of the metaphor that I really like to keep in mind. And at the same time, all 3 models have relevance. It's not that one is better than the other depending on the individual. There are people who need very clear structures. They can function only within a very clear framework. So they need that kind of structure. There are people who are far more fluid. There are people who need a lot more wider range of freedom. Even within a given organization, you will find this type of layers happening. People who need clear structure and people who need to be given complete freedom. So within Auroville, as I started living there and started exploring, I was seeing what makes people come alive to create, what makes your own intelligence to come alive. And here again I would like to use another metaphor, like the way Auroville began. It was a barren land, and what was done was initially to fence around areas so that it is protected from cows and goats from coming in and eating whatever you plant. So you protect the area, so there is a boundary condition, and then you have seedlings planted during monsoon, and within few years it is emerging as a thriving ecosystem. And within 10 years you see that the birds are migrating from, you can't even trace from where they are coming. All types of animals begins to migrate. These are things that you are not planned. All that you have done is creating a condition where life can emerge. And we see that nature has such an incredible intelligence, and not only intelligence, incredible creative power that makes things come up and then forests start self-propagating themselves. You don't have to look after things. The system self-generates, self-regulates, self-propagates, self-sustains, and it thrives. And your intervention is minimum, only pruning here and then, protecting the system. And there is already a great intelligence in place in nature, and we are part of that nature, and that same intelligence is working through us. But unfortunately, when it comes to the mental form of intelligence and the mental way of doing things, which has to conceptualize and strategize and plan every step and try to control every little detail, it becomes very, very stiff. And we get cut off from the natural intelligence and spontaneity and actual creative power of nature. So this is something we see happening in the nature, the trees, the plants, the whole ecosystems emerging. But to translate that power into human organizations, where we come together as a collective body, as a corporate body, or as a social body, an educational institution, or any form of organizations, where we are largely facing an issue of people losing their motivation. They have to be motivated through carrot stick method. You have to drive people one way or other, tempting them or whipping them. Without that, people don't move. Whereas in nature, there is already the power to mobilize creativity, curiosity, everything. If you look at children, they are naturally, spontaneously creative. And we don't have to actually drive them. Actually, we are trying to stop them from exploring, because there is too much natural, spontaneous energy, and we want to control them. Already existing creativity, intelligence, innovation, ability, everything is there, and we lose this thing in the process. In the process of getting educated, in the process of getting organized, in which individuals begins to suffocate and lose their capacity, and even the organization itself is not really tapping into the innate potential that is already available within the organization, within the resources, the people resources. So what are the conditions? How to liberate this potential that is already there, and this intelligence, this creativity? So while this observations, I was just studying these things and trying to understand, looking at myself, my own journey, why I migrated from a particular form of organization to something like Auroville, where there was complete individual freedom to innovate, to explore, and to make even mistakes. And we had colleagues, a large number of them were, they were actually corporate dropouts. I had a very close friend who was from General Electricals. He was a member of a think tank, and he left all that, and he was here in South India living in a little hut planting trees, and very happy about it. And he found meaning in doing these things and regenerating ecosystems. And we had many such people, so we used to explore these aspects. What is it that is driving us? Nobody is paying you, nobody is driving you. You are self-driven to seek something, to find meaning, to find your full potential. So these observations, as it was happening, this metaphor of, say, fencing around an area and putting the right seeds in tune with nature's rhythms, and things suddenly emerge. From that context, I started seeing some patterns, especially so the way the World Wide Web emerged. Like Tim Berners-Lee, when he was designing the system, he saw that he was exploring intelligence, artificial intelligence. There was a methodology that was prevalent at that time. Even now it is continuing. Artificial intelligence, in order to do that, you need supercomputers, computers that can do huge amount of crunching and then intelligence algorithms to run the show. But it is all a highly centralized method. But he thought differently. He saw that the way meanings are generated. How does meaning come into existence? What is the underlying structure by which meaning is generated? And he had this vision. Say, if you look at English language, a dictionary, you take one word that is explained by another set of words, and if you take up any of those words, they are explained by yet another set of words. End of the day, the whole linguistic system is built on relationships between words. It boils down to relationships. If there is a way of creating new relationships, that will generate new meanings. All laws of physics, if we look at it, it is end of the day finding relationships between temperature, volume, what is the relationship and what are the proportions. It's all about relationships. So from there he started building. Across the world there are thousands of computers sitting with huge amount of data, and internet was already there, but it was not exploding. And this was in 89-90. And he created a method by which people can easily link from here to there and move from one computer to another, one document to another. Hyperlinks were already there, but it was working within a single document. What he did was, he wrote all the HTTP, HTML standards, first browser, first server, all those things, and he let the technology free, allowed people to make relationships, one document to other. You link from here to there and empowered people to make those connections. In 1990 he set this in motion, and the rest is history. The whole world, within a short time, the networking between the documents happened suddenly. So there was the internet as a soil that was ready, in which this little fractal seed of making connections was planted. Very simple technology. He didn't own it. He did not want to centralize the whole thing. He wanted to empower. And it suddenly created new relationships, and he foresaw, if we create new relationships, new connections, from those new connections, new relationships, new meanings will arise. From new meanings, new powers will come, new intelligence will come, new capacity of action will arise. And that is precisely what happened across the world. There was a whole set of new type of relationships. So in 94, Amazon came up, and relating between the buyer and sellers, and between the users' data they started using, and recommending books, and whole types of intelligence started arising out of it. And Yahoo came up, but they used old way of providing search result by using people categorizing. But Google came up with going back to the foundations. What is the relationship between the documents? How many times a particular document is referred, and ranking the documents accordingly using that relationship matrix. Again, it is going back to relationships that created intelligence. And they swept across the world, created whole new way of dealing with information, making intelligent results out of the huge ocean of information that was available. Then down the line came Facebook. What they did, they analyzed the relationship between people. It is already there are existing relationships between people, and how do you bring that up? Because once we bring out those relationships, something new can happen out of it, and that's art has become a huge phenomenon across the world. Network of friendships, trusted networks of friendship, through which people are rapidly connecting. And if say Google was harvesting information, Facebook was harvesting emotion. They were specializing in positive emotion. That's why when you go to Facebook, there is no way to put your thumb down. You can only like, you cannot dislike. If you dislike, keep quiet. And there is a reason behind it. Everybody, our society, generally people are emotionally starved, and we are all broken away from our relationships, connections, and coming into our cities and living alone, and we are emotionally starved. And what they did is they brought out all those connections that was lost, and enriched emotionally, and harvested emotions, enabled people emotionally charged. And that's why people say, what are you doing in Facebook? It's not productive. You're wasting your time. Of course. You love to hang out there, and you love to be with your friends. And being with friends, you are not looking for being productive. And there is another aspect of human being that's getting nourished and nurtured, a new kind of social formations and capacities were emerging. So it was not only, say, sort of collective intelligence, it was collective emotions, and even it was translating into collective actions. Just like an individual has intelligence, has emotion, and there is a capacity for action, same thing was happening. So once you are able to connect, mediated by internet, World Wide Web, now you have to direct your intelligence, your emotions into some practical actions. So we see over the last 2 years, for example, there was this Delhi rape case. Suddenly there was this whole nation rising up and acting and channeling the power, and even people finally getting onto the ground, say this must end. And just before that, against corruption, again the people were coming together, mediated by social media, to come together and act. And say organizations like ours begins to harvest people's attention and target specific social problems. We can gather attention and target, and that become force of action within the society. So a whole new form of social action begins to happen. And parallel to this was simultaneously happening open source communities. In when did it happen? 91. There was Linux was launched, which was the flagship for open source community, and people found it worth dedicating their time, creativity, and energy for a noble cause. And same thing happened in 2001 when Wikipedia came up with something that is completely counterintuitive. Here is an encyclopedia that you can edit, and that was completely unbelievable thing to do. And people came and did, and intelligence emerged out of it. No one was willing to trust the crowd, but it happened. And when you are trusted, when someone says I trust you and actually shows in their action that I trust you, something happens to you. You respond accordingly. That was first software that openly declared that I trust you, and people responded. Softwares have character. Every product has character. It is speaking to you in certain language. So here is something that is telling you, I trust you completely. You do whatever you want. Abuse if you want, no problem. And that was the year when Encyclopedia Britannica reached their sale peak. And last year in 2012, they closed down their print edition. You know that. That was end of an era. They have lasted around probably more than 2 centuries. And within 12 years of Encyclopedia, Wikipedia, Britannica is no more in print. There is something else happening here. Power of the collective and noble intentions. And there is something noble in people. Everyone wants to do something noble. And same thing happened. I was looking for software for our internet community, and I found there is something called Drupal. It's an open source content management system, and I went into their site and looked at their documentation, and I found that I can edit the document. The software was saying, community is saying, we trust you. This is our documentation. You are free to edit it. That's a language. We trust you. And that brings a response that is quite different. There is no control. There is no policing. And people coming forward and contributing their creativity. And from there, if we look at the way now the explosion of creativity that is happening. You remember the project called OLPC? 1 laptop per child? Yeah, $100 systems. Their intention was very noble, but methodology they followed was a bit too closed. bit too centralized. Whereas if we look at the way iPads and iPhones came up and the methodology they have created a space, an operating system or an operating environment, and created a product development kit and opened up for the people. You create apps, and people came up with creating thousands and thousands of apps. And Android came up just in 2008, and now look at the explosion of creativity that is happening. People are creating, unlike Wikipedia where people poured in their energy, created that whole thing. Here it was also creating an opportunity to create income. There was an environment where you can bring in your creativity, you are independent, and you are only following basic rules of the game. You come up with your creativity. If it is a centralized organization, they cannot create such an output of creative explosion in such short time. There is an extreme decentralization. There are basic rules of the game, and let it happen, and then it creates something like an ecosystem. Now if we look at organizations and new forms of emerging intelligence and working together, people are talking about ecosystems. It's not about organization as we understand it. An ecosystem is where we do not have a hierarchic structure. We cannot go to a forest and ask who is the boss here. It doesn't work. There is a network of connections, and there is incredible intelligence, and it is incredible diversity, independence, creativity, and it comes together and start working together, and another level of intelligence is operating. It is not our individual's mind that is conceiving all the details of how something is going to happen. What you can do is you have some seed potent idea that you are planting, and then it start growing and it start attracting things. So this is now happening across the world. People are finding more and more innovative ways of doing this. That is, you are not designing the entire system. You are identifying what is the core fractal that can generate the complexity and letting it free, emerge, the emergence, the property of emergence, and there is a creative space, things are emerging and thriving. And most of these are happening, you may think that it's only happening online space, but it's also happening offline. Like when I was referring to, I joined Auroville. Auroville is a community like that. It was an offline open source community where there was no private property. We had nearly 5,000 acres of, and it's just like a canvas. Now people can come here. There are basic rules. You cannot own anything. There is no private property, and there are actually no major rules. You have to invent. You bring people from all over the world, live together, create your ideal, live your dream, and there is nobody policing you. You have to do it yourself. So when people started coming and finding their ways, and an ecosystem emerged over there. Each individual is self-driven. Just like any other ecosystem, you are driven from within. Nobody is policing you. And you even work hard and generate money to be there. We cannot ask, in normal organizations, if you take money out of it, the salary system out of it, most organizations just fall apart. What holds people together? What is the power binding people together to form a cluster? There are many things that we can do. One was, in old days, it was the geography. Our mobility was limited. So we were bound by the geography, and that created clusters and communities over the years. When you live together, it forms a community. But when we became mobile, we were able to move from place to place, migrate to cities and join organizations. And we were looking for something that supports us. That primarily people were looking for money and resources, and whoever paid more, so I go to that organization. So it was money that was used as an attractor to bring people together, to cluster them and get your work done. And you are not so much, organizations were not so much concerned about what actually this fellow wants. What organization is concerned about, I want something, and if I can hire you, and if you can do this, I will pay you this. And there is a negotiation between you and the organization. And the moment somebody else is willing to pay better perks, better money, you move there. And now across the organization, one issue is you can't hold people anymore with money. More and more people are going beyond money. There is enough money, survival is no more an issue, and people are migrating from one organization to another organization looking for more meaning. A better working environment, better working atmosphere, and better relationships, and all that. The needs, as our basic needs are taken care, our deeper needs come into picture. And people find meaning in doing especially something noble, because everyone has a need to belong to some identity. If you are completely alone, there is something deeply missing. We want to belong to something. At the same time, we want to differentiate and want to have certain level of freedom. So balancing between your individual freedom and the collective identity is a deep psychological need. And say being part of an open source community and doing something is a voluntary work that gives you great joy. Now there are a large number of offline ways of volunteering. Especially many spiritual communities are doing that because it gives a sense of joy. There is a great joy in the act of giving. Like if we look at, say, world's richest man, who was, I don't know now who it is, in say Bill Gates when he was there. I mean still in as number one, I don't know. So initially what happens is as a child, you are always taking. In order to grow, you need to take. Then you learn to transact, you do business and you generate wealth. That's your second phase is being a trader. First is being like a receiver, you need things. Then you become a trader, generate wealth. But after a point you have enough wealth, and to find a greater fulfillment, you have to become a giver, like being a parent, from being a child to adult to a parent. So then he left all that and he became a technically what do you call it? Philanthropist. Okay, funding large number of projects and want to do something. This is a natural progression in our development, and everyone goes through becoming a stage of becoming a parent and discovering a greater joy in being a parent, where you give, you discover the joy of giving, not so much in receiving, just the fact of I can give something to somebody. When you fall in love, that's what happens. If you really enjoy giving, if somebody is actually able to receive, it's a great joy. So that once you reach that phase, it's with natural progression, or if you start giving, you discover this spontaneous joy that is arising within you. So we have volunteering organizations creating opportunities for people to come forward, volunteer and experience that joy. And that unconditional giving, especially if the giving is unconditional and if your motivation is noble, something begins to happen within you. And this, like Auroville as a community, one of the conditions is you are here to give, not to take. So in all the open source communities, sharing and giving is the culture. It's fundamental for this new system to emerge. Culture is based on giving, and it's even made into licensing forms have been created to protect, say, GPL and Creative Commons and all that are created so that the what is given and co-created. Now you can thrive on co-creation when things are not owned by individuals. The intellectual property has become sort of dirty word in this kind of communities. Whereas old models of organizations, Microsoft will say sharing, that they call it piracy if you share something. And it's completely different paradigm, and it's operating at very, very different level of intelligence, different level of social organization and relationships between people. And yeah, here we are coming to the relationships. the nature of human relationships in this kind of context is fundamentally different. That bond between people, the social bond, has a positive quality when a system is generated out of complete giving, and a system where gifting is happening is automatically generating its collective wealth, and wealth is becoming more and more collective. Linux belongs to nobody in particular, it belongs to humanity as a whole. Actually, I am talking Auroville's charter. This is Auroville's charter first line. Auroville belongs to nobody in particular, Auroville belongs to humanity as a whole. So if we take all the products that are emerging through open source communities, it belongs to humanity as a whole. Collective wealth, collective ownership. The ownership patterns are shifting. And people are trusted. When you trust, people bring forth their creativity. And in that process, they are clustering together into identities based on a noble ideal. There is an ideal that attracts people. There is a vision, a noble vision that attracts. It's not money that is attracting people. It's a noble vision, noble ideal that acts as an attractor that gathers people, and people are driven by inspiration. It's not carrot and stick method. They are driven from within. So there is a self-driven approach, and in this context, leadership is not about driving people, not about directing, not even about really guiding. It's being present with that inspired energy within you. If you are not inspired and driven by that inspiration, and if you are not living that vision and that ideal, you cannot motivate and inspire others. It's very simple. And there is high degree of transparency in all these communities. About even there is no personal life in the sense that everything is open. There is a deep relationship between people. So there are three institutions that are getting converged into these forms, especially offline communities. That is, we have home, that is one institution, social institution. Family is a social institution. Then we have university, that's a learning place, that's another form of social institution. Then there is workplace, that's third social institution, corresponding to three major faculties of human being: love, knowledge, the will, that is capacity for work. And these three are our three faculties, and there are three different institutions. And what is happening in our fragmented society is that all three are segregated. We say don't bring work home, or don't bring your home issue, family issues to work. And if you want to study, then you have to go to the university, that is separate. Now in these communities, what is happening is a convergence of all these institutions into one space, where your children, your relationships, your family is all within the community. And that's where children are born, children are grown, and that is where schools are. They are growing up in the same school under the same vision, and that's also the place where you work. Everything is integrated. It's an integrated ecosystem where you are not fragmented. Work, will, love, knowledge all goes together, and learning is non-stop. It's happening continuously. And so is new form of, say, joint family systems that are arising within this kind of communities. Say we have apartments. We have apartments everywhere now, but all these are independent flats where families are living independently. It is not necessary to know who is below your floor. Whereas we are building apartments where people are living together, but there is common dining hall, and there is common laundry. There is all types of basic common things, facilities, so that you don't have to separately have your cooking and washing and all the basic things about electricity or water or everything. It's a community, it's a joint family type of situation that helps to build relationships. When you eat together and when you play together, your playgrounds are nearby, you play together, it creates human relationships, a rich set of relationships where it is nurtured. You get nurtured by the diversity that is available in this kind of communities. where say we are very multifaceted beings. We have many facets. Unfortunately, in the fragmented society, only some of the aspects get nurtured. In the work context, for example, only bring that. Whereas you may be a musician, a dancer, a singer, a swimmer, or all kinds of capacities may be there hidden within you, but you will not be able to explore all that. Whereas when people start coming together and living in this kind of clusters, the possibility of the diversity of exploring various facets of your life come into picture, and that gives a whole full development of your personality. And there is this movement now happening across the world called intentional communities. People are leaving cities and going into remote places as a group, buying large plots of land together and starting a community. Though it's still in the early phases, it's still not in the mainstream media, because it's happening in a decentralized, dispersed way. Across the world it is happening. If you search for intentional communities, you will find this information. So there is, other hand, online communities happening. And online communities, in order to actually build relationships, what they're doing is you create conferences or get-togethers here or there in different cities, and people come together and get to know, relate, connect. But still, with online communities, one issue is you're still sitting individually, separate. And then slowly people are now shifting more and more into offline communities, where you're getting grounded on the soil, where you are with like-minded people. That enriches your rapid growth, rapid development, and your sense of identity with the larger collective, and your dream, whatever the dream that you have. So individual is aligning with a vision that inspires them, and across the world humanity is getting regrouped according to the dreams. There are like-minded people coming together, clustering, and these clusters can potentially become offline communities, and the movement is already building up. And the templates are already emerging, and the culture is fundamentally different, a culture of giving, a new type of leadership, and high degree of freedom, and high degree of diversity. And you know what is the definition of intelligence, or what are the aspects of intelligence, what psychologists do? One is ability to learn and adapt. The context is constantly changing. Anything that is intelligent will be able to adapt rapidly, learn rapidly. Second thing is ability to do different things, multiple things. It's not about specialization. If you specialize, you lose your flexibility. Whereas generally, if you look at geniuses, they have a capacity in various fields. This is another aspect of intelligence, ability to do many different things, and ability to quickly learn and adapt. And this kind of ecosystems that are emerging are highly flexible, adaptive, and diverse. That's why we can see the intelligence, new type of intelligence that is emerging, but at the same time, if we look at them from the point of view of the conventional, say, a hierarchic model of structured organization, they say this is not very productive. Just like saying, say, the Facebook is not very productive. What is being produced is something very intangible. Say, an emotional wealth is not something that you can quantify. There is, say, when there is an evolutionary leap happens, the previous model cannot really understand the new one. The real value of it is not understood. For example, imagine good old days before humans emerged, and when the first humans emerged out of the monkeys, and one guy is sitting and thinking and discovering his mind and capacity, the monkey will be wondering what this guy is doing. Useless, he is not able to jump across one tree to another, he's lost that capacity, and now he is sitting and thinking. It's completely useless fellow. Monkey cannot understand what's going on in people's mind. even now when we sit in front of a computer or reading a book and enjoying that, a monkey cannot conceive what enjoyment is this. Look, jumping from one tree to another is far more exciting. So, same way, this new type of entities that are emerging may appear to be not so productive in the conventional sense, but there is a deeper fulfillment in people, and they are exploring something deeper in terms of what is emerging through them. There is the nature's urge in the individual to bloom. So that potential is getting unleashed, and it is taking new forms, and they generally take on the form of art, creativity, all this. Maybe I would like to stop at this point, and I would like to have questions if you have, so that we can. Yeah, 6:53.
I think we are more interested to listen to you talking more than asking the question. So we don't have a question.
I have a question. Hello. What I observed is in these emergent kind of things, there's some kind of discomfort with this whole thing, because we generally tend to be very deterministic, right? Do this, do this, do this, do this, and this happens. But in an emergent kind of community, I mean, this happens a lot even in social media. You don't know what it is about, right? It generally does things, something happens. It's not very easy to handle that, because all your life you're told you do this, read, write exam, you get marks, right? It's sort of, even in the corporation it's like that. You do these tasks, the project gets complete. So how do you all deal with that in Auroville? If somebody is new, who doesn't understand this emergent thing, how will you counsel the person?
Maybe I'll give you an example from a retreat design that happened in Auroville. To be comfortable with uncertainty, unpredictability, we need to train ourselves to be comfortable in that zone. So we were designing a 4-day retreat in Auroville. There were people coming from outside. I'm part of, Irul was there, we were all part of a small group called Chitta Sangha, Consciousness Collaborative. And in the design, 5 days we are coming together and there was no agenda. And that's very, very disturbing and destabilizing for people. Look, I am investing 5 days of my life and coming all the way from Delhi, Hyderabad and all this, and how can you do that without an agenda? Now we need to have a return, a very clear return for my investment, right? That's our normal approach. But we had said, we are only designing the containers. That is, we have 5 days, the time is divided into, say there is a work time, there is a play time, and there is a sharing time. So we created small segments of time where this is the nature of activity that we will be doing this time. So when we come on the first day, so you never know till that point what else has happened. So let's not decide beforehand 1 month down the line what we will be doing at that day at that time. So we just say we will just take up this type of session during 9 to 12, and that day morning come up with whatever be the agendas that you have really burning at that point of time. So morning, so we had few rituals of just connecting, relating and respecting, honoring everybody, and then say put out the agendas. So different people come up with different agendas and say, now who is resonating with what? So we create clusters of resonance. So we are not creating an agenda and force fitting everybody into that agenda. Now everyone must follow this particular agenda, but follow only what you really get drawn towards. And we created these things and experimented. Within 5 days, it was one of the most creative retreats we had, and we had many emergent, very creative tools for transformational practices. All that emerged spontaneously. It was not planned, and it happened. So we have to invent methods, but trust. We may make mistakes, but what happens in this kind of context is that when something emerges, especially a collective creativity suddenly begins to explode. You feel the energy happening, and you know that it is not yours. You have added a small part to the story, but it is suddenly emerging through the people. Some other intelligence come into the picture, and it plays out. And at the end of it, you know that it's not we who created it, it's something else. Something happened, and there is an elevation, there is a heightening of energy, the joy of being together, and something happened. It's possible, and we have to find those ways. We have to learn to tune in to that finer way of being together without too much anxiety about that predictability. Does that
See, what Sukumar is asking is, in an environment, say corporate environment, where the agenda is fixed. In Auroville, agenda is not, Auroville or open source, agenda is not fixed. I think sometime back we had a session like being comfortable, I mean, what is that? Being with uncomfortable. So, we want, see, ours is uncomfortable thing, having an agenda. So, how do we incorporate this thought process or the open source thought process in a corporate world? I think something like that, not exactly the same, but
this particular example I gave, many of them were actually from the corporate background.
Right.
It is not Auroville people who were coming together, and those who were from the corporate background had the difficulty because the paradigm was different. And in the group, we had the mixed group where those who are coming from no agenda approach to those who are coming from agenda approach. But unless this fundamental paradigm is consciously explored and wholeheartedly explored, if we have doubt, of course we will always, there is no energy to actually make it manifest. We need to really have open heart, certain readiness. It's like, say, from ice cube to water, the shift in the state happens. Say, below zero, it is always solid. Unless it crosses over zero, it won't become liquid. So, the structural change, the phase change happens only when the consciousness reaches certain point of capacity to trust and let go and surrender. That if that readiness is not there, we cannot force something at the solid state to be in the liquid state. So, the shift in consciousness is fundamental. It's not only just the belief that is to change, your state of being has to change. And that's where the whole layer of consciousness and the play with consciousness come into the picture. How you shift your consciousness from one level to another so that naturally you are functioning at another aspect. That requires a whole lot of training in consciousness.
maybe I think in similar lines I will ask I'll rephrase the question. The entire open source or the community of Auroville is completely intrinsic motivation. So the corporate world is completely extrinsic motivation. I mean 180 degree apart. So if we want to, because trust us, 90% are corporate people. So how do we bring an intrinsic motivation to achieve this in the extrinsic motivated community?
It's already, say, within any collective, even within the corporate body. So there will be layers or clusters who are operating at a level of greater level of freedom. Say for example, within a corporate structure, the lower rung will be more like ice cubes. they need structure. They need to be told what is to be done, things are to be defined. Then there is no point in attempting at that level. Whereas there will be layers on largely in the upper layers, especially young people who are now, corporations are getting, all the young people are coming in who are born in this environment, who knows before they get crystallized, and bringing in, if you try with people who are say 50 plus, very, very difficult. Because when the conditioning, it's with age, it gets hardened. And if you catch young, and it is already there, and experiments, if it is done and consciously, this is what we are trying to experiment. It can be started off. But I do not have much experience in working in the corporate world, so I will not be able to say much in that context.
Auroville must get people from all age groups.
Yeah, we have age groups. In fact, we are facing issue with, say we had predominantly a pre-internet generation. We still have pre-internet generation, the hippie generation, who were anti-authority, anti-structure. Everything is anti. And to get them to even use online tools. I was introducing our online tools to come together and use these tools. It was very difficult. In the community, we were facing other extreme issue of things get very scattered, and when we have to say sign up a contract with the government and things like that, someone has to sign. And who is this someone who is going to sign? You need to have a boss. And we do face this kind of, so we have to create some kind of authority figure, some position so that he can sign, though in actuality something like that does not exist. So we do face other level of problems in this community, whereas what I see is a potential for marrying these two extremes, where we have to learn how to introduce, say, a process design that is more efficient. In a community process like this, in a chaotic situation, though there is a lot of possibilities to simplify many things. Like in nature, nature produces 100,000 things, and out of that few things works out. The same thing happens in this kind of context. There are explosion of creativity and certain things suddenly begins to pop up. Though things can be simplified, there can be a marriage between the two, where there are many things from the corporate efficiency can be learned, or the community's flexibility can be brought into the corporations. These are areas to be explored. I do not know.
Open source systems on their own, they are very, very productive to a large extent. We all know a lot of examples. And but if you see the economic sense, it is ownership, patents, which actually brings in the money to most of the systems today, actually. So what probably from the previous questions I'm just extending it. How do you actually have a hybrid system where both can sustain and both can actually be very, very productive? That is probably the challenge for most of the corporates. I'm not sure whether all corporates really like everyone to have freedom, or only the R&D departments or only particular departments to have freedom.
Yeah.
If the gates are open, can it be controlled later on? Will always be a challenge. Am I right or wrong? Somewhere there, I don't know.
Yeah, this is already happening, where on one hand corporations are beginning to tap into the crowdsourcing and social media and engage with the community, and community management has become a keyword. How do you manage this chaotic system? Because it's not just intelligence, it's also collective emotions and collective confusions. All that comes through community. So filtering the signal from the noise is a major issue when you deal with a community where there is no real structured process. But IBM has taken lead in these things. They had opened up a large number of their patents to the open source community. An open source community will not participate in the collective process in this corporate world unless certain basic things like opening your patents to the community is respected. So Google did a very smart thing with Android. It is open source, and Android apps are crowdsourced. It's a crossbreed when those who are creating can also generate wealth, and a large number of apps are free, but those who wants to sell it can sell it, and there is like in between model where there is a central corporate body, but it also has a open source interface and collection, a relationship with that community where there is common wealth. See, Android is a commonwealth. So these models are already emerging, but engaging with the community is a whole new skill that has to be learned, which is there are positions being created called the community managers. But who is actually a community manager? How do you manage a community? All these are still being debated and explored, and it's still not very clear. But these are rapidly growing areas of management where they are trying to figure out how do we now deal with this explosive social media and great deal of intelligence that is available. But it's a very new area.
I have a question on the scale. Even in corporate organizations, over the period we have seen, when the organization is small, it's new. Even in corporate world, people are given a lot of freedom. They innovate. They do all sort of things. But as the scale of the organization grows, people have to, like say, put in some control, bring in some policing, so that things it doesn't go out of control. Even like say in Facebook, online communities, if you see, like say you have your user ID password, you have like say, you can control who can post on your wall, who can see your photos. So in offline communities, like do you think it can still be maintained if the scale goes, it grows bigger and bigger?
See, in Auroville we are 2,300. At this scale, it's working, and we are looking at 50,000 people. Dream is to scale it up further, and you need certain scale to understand certain level of complexity, and how to do it, nobody actually knows, because these are very fresh areas where we are experimenting. And elements that work is, one is trust, transparency. If these two things, and they go together, when you trust somebody, they become transparent. When you are transparent, others trust. And integrity in the operations. If you try to fool, there is no community. So you have to be very, very authentic. So there is a growing pressure among all types of systems to be authentic, to be transparent, and to trust in human goodness. There is something in that. So the nature has already taken this direction, and ways will be found. So we have to trust. Again, it's an emergent aspect we are talking about. Might want a very clear-cut solution, we do not know. But if we trust and come to the essential principles of trust, transparency, authenticity, if your concern is genuine, people can easily see through, and people will respond, no matter what scale. But the seed from which things start, that must be really, really authentic, based on truth, authenticity, then it happens.
Manoj, if you go back in time and look at ancient civilization, for example, like how the pyramids were built, or if you go back to our Vedic scriptures, there's so much of stress on discipline and structure. There has been so much intelligence in the ancient past. All of us would agree that when we look at the Vedas, we're like, wow, there's so much in it, and there has been somebody who's very intelligently thought of these things. Or even any other religion, for example, the Bible that has the commandments. And why is it that, there wasn't too much of creativity encouraged? Or, everything, could be a sin, or you had to follow the Shastras, or a man's life had to be the brahmachari's life and then went into something else. It had to evolve that way. And there was very clear-cut rules in how a man had to live. Beat the Gita, all that. So there was a lot of discipline and structure around that age, and a lot of intelligence evolved that was passed on to us. So how did that happen, and how are we evolving now into a different structure?
If we look at ancient India, what we see is autonomous regions, small regions that were autonomous, and the kings had principles to follow, a high degree of principles to follow. They were not autocrats. They couldn't do that. They were highly decentralized village level autonomy to larger scales. And it may not be accurate to say that there was not so much creativity. In fact, when we look back, when we look at all this incredibly beautiful, rich temples and artworks that have created over thousands of years, there was such a tremendous creativity happening. And it was highly decentralized. It was not centralized system in India. India centralization happened when Alexander's attack happened over India, and it was afterwards the empires were built. It was a nation's innate response to protect itself through large empire body. But India had cultural unity. Unity was at cultural level, and in every other field it was incredible diversity without a political unity. And large scale political unity was brought in by the British. A political structural unity was brought in by the British by forging everything into one political unity. But the unity was deeper. There was a spiritual and cultural unity that was holding people together, governing the systems. It was values that were governing people. And there was incredible creativity. If we look at any field in India, if we look at ancient Sanskrit literature, whether it is the health or astronomy or any field, yoga or architecture, everywhere you find most advanced developments of knowledge systems, practical systems, highly systematized, codified methodologies, thousands of methodologies of exploring consciousness. What we have not done is like what today's modern science doing, the visible form of gross forms of technology, which is also highly destructive. We had technologies that were far more subtle, technologies of consciousness. And not only we were dealing with material plane, we were also dealing with other planes of reality. It was multi-dimensional reality they were dealing with. Right now, today's civilization knows only material, physical layer of reality, nothing more. For them, it was not so much important to create material drama. They were moving across dimensions and relationship with other forms of life, which was not physical. We know very little about this ancient civilization.
If you see nature also, sorry for asking this question, what is really new about nature? It's the same old thing happening again and again. What is the
I didn't follow the question.
I mean, it's all the same thing, which has been there for ages now. I mean, I'm talking about the nature, except for what man has done to disturb nature and find out whatever new he has done. What has happened new in the nature? The same animals which die, again born, same trees which die, again born. What is so creative or new about nature?
Nature's process is very slow. Nature comes up with a new life form over thousands or millions of years. But even within a single group called humans, every human being is unique. Every fingerprint is unique. Nature mass produces but never repeats. No two people are the same. And if we just look at human beings, what nature has produced, and nature has endowed them with intelligence and empowered them, now we have given you freedom, you co-create. along with me.
So what humans are doing is natural progression.
Nature has endowed us with intelligence, but what happened in the process of mental development is we got cut off from nature's, say, synthetic, harmonious, larger level of intelligence and action, and now that is what is being explored. Now how this fragmentation created by the mind can be minimized so that we can plug in back to the larger level of harmony, so that that incredible creativity that the nature has handed over to us can be used to create whole new reality, whole new possibilities, which nature is doing through us. The world as it existed during the period of Buddha is not the same world that is available now, and plastic did not exist 60 years ago. We are able to now mold matter into new forms, so we can create new forms of matter, new forms of life, but we need wisdom. We lack wisdom right now. That's our problem, and we have to get back to wisdom.
I think, see what my grandfather enjoyed, okay, he enjoyed starting from his childhood, to his adolescent, adulthood, and then married life and so on. That my father enjoyed, which I enjoy now. After some time my son is going to enjoy. So the one thing that remains common across all this thing is the cycle is the same, but people are different. So the people different people is the only thing which nature really.
What is new nature? That is what Frank says. We are new. If it is not for humans, there is no scope for anything new. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Actually, I would like to add one more thing into this.
Same sun comes up in the morning exactly almost the same time. It's not so predictable in nature.
Even so, the ecosystem will be affected, so there will be a change in some way. We are interacting with nature, we causing, we are a part of that whole system.
One of the
I agree with your point. I completely agree with your point. Being done through humans. It's okay. But suppose, assume, just for a hypothetical case, remove the human element. Is there anything new in nature? That's again a hypothetical question I'm asking.
No, I think species are evolving all the time. New species are getting created, new species.
Have you seen anything new? I have not seen any new species.
Who I have
difference,
personally seen is documented.
the time scale is the issue. The problem is time frame. Human beings are looking at a very small time frame, whereas nature works with large time spans. But there is incredible creativity.
But even in small time frames such as, see, right now every hour new species are created and some species are dying every hour. Maybe every minute, every second, every nanosecond. So it's very dynamic.
In the east, setting in the west, and the cycle of seasons happening. It rains, snows, it's all the same.
What is new? Just tell me a quick example.
But that's what time is we are not able to we are not able to see the time because we are living only for 100 years. We are not able to see exactly infinite years back the sun was rising in the west and some meteor struck and then it started rising in the east. If I say that hypothetical statement, you have to believe it because we don't have a proof for.
Also, the physical laws are the same, the laws of gravitation, laws of centrifugal forces.
Some things are the same, but some lot of things.
These laws that we evolve.
Why? I'm not sure you can say everything is static.
I feel whatever humans we do as something like say new or creative, it's nature doing it through us. And if humans
that is one thing.
and if humans are not there, I'll answer that question. If humans are not there, probably there will be some other species who will like say have the same intelligence as humans, and they'll be doing it. So it's we being humans, we are getting to do it. If humans are not there, probably some other dinosaurs or lion or tiger, they'll be doing it probably.
This is regarding collective intelligence. So I think, okay, anyways, so I read an article very recently, a blog which talks about a research where some Canadian researchers were researching with monkeys. So one of the eatable, I forgot what it is, type of fruit or something. They wrapped it with sand and they gave it to monkeys. And over a period of time, what happened? Like they did not like it, and most of the monkeys stopped eating it. But they still continued with the process. After some time, a young monkey, what happened, what it did is like it went and it washed it in water and it started eating. Slowly, like, but the phenomenon spread very slowly, like to their family members started following it, and it was adopted in a very slow fashion. But after some magic number, I don't believe in magic numbers, but still after say 100 or 200 monkeys started doing this, the entire island started, in very few days they started following the same thing. They washed and they started consuming. And one more interesting phenomenon was that few months later, monkeys in a neighboring island also started following the same thing. So it's a phenomenon of collective intelligence. It's rationally certain things were not very clear to me. So how did it go beyond to a different island or something? So I just want your thoughts on this.
Yeah, this particular phenomenon, I guess it is called 100 monkey effect. Actually, what we experience subjectively as individual mind is part of universal mind. Mind is universal, but we plug into a small part of it, and we have a set of familiar thoughts and capacity, and we think I have an individual mind and individual capacity. And when an individual makes a breakthrough, a new capacity is developed, that become part of the collective mind. And when, say, let's take this 100 monkey effect, some 100 of them does it, it become part of the collective being. We are not only individual beings, we are also collective beings. It's one being. And it become part of that, and it requires certain number of individuals that enables that imprint in the collective universal. Once it's part of the universal, the rest of humanity or monkeys or anything, they can easily have it. It's ingrained in the collective being. Usually animals are not individuated, they are collective beings. It's only human beings who have the capacity to have an individual mind, and that too not everyone develops. And even among those who develop, very few actually makes original breakthrough. Not everyone knew how to use mobile phones. Some 100 monkeys must have done it, and it's now it's very easy. It's a very complex thing. If we just look at what we do every day, this machine is very complex, but it is so easy now to use it. But if we show this to somebody some 100 years ago, they will go completely nuts to learn this. It's part of the collective. The children who are born into internet, for them everything is so natural. They go and touch TV, and also now the touch screens, they explore everywhere. For them every screen is touch screen. Yeah, why it's not working the natural way? For them it is natural. So once we understand the collective mind and put an imprint, that very few have actually the capacity to imprint the collective mind, it becomes obvious.
We should not tire Manoj. Manoj can go on. I think we can get into some other zone. I think, like, when you hear Manoj. So I think we close the questions and thank Manoj for his excellent sharing.
Thank you.
Manoj, normally in our busy corporate work schedule, we never get time to think on these kind of lines, and then even go into this kind of zone. So you opened up new thoughts for us to go back and think, and then because many things we take it for granted actually. I mean, we don't realize the kind of wonders we're doing as a collective team. So thanks for sharing this excellent thing, and I request Sukumar to kindly come and.
Brilliant.
just require 5 minutes of it.